Hey everybody, sorry it's been a while. So, for me to start where it all began in the beginning, so I really just want to give you my background, as in where my parents come from, how they met, so you have an idea why my mom was the way she was and why my dad was the way he was. So, my mom was in the farm business, so she did a lot of cattle work. My dad, when you're in Russia, you join the military as soon as you basically get out of the school. So, so somehow in between what I was told, my mom and dad met by the train tracks while she was working in the cattle field. So more of the story, they get together at a very young age. They get married and they had my brother. So, and then there was an accident that occurred in Chernobyl. So my dad was the first person out of, I don't know how many military members went down there to organize what happened in Ukraine. So, with that being said, my dad was in Ukraine for about 3 days. So when he got there, he was out there as a horse. And then within 3 days, he had more radiation poisoning than what they really wanted him to have. So they had to send him back to my hometown. So when he got there, I don't really know exactly details. I just know that he started having headaches, and he didn't really get into drinking or anything like that until later on. So I want to say my dad and my mom were very young. So by the time I was becoming in the picture, I think they were about 18, 19 years old. Um, so, so I was born in '88. So by then, my dad started drinking a little bit more. So when I was growing up, we had my dad was never around, so I never understood why. My mom was around, but she was never in around, if I should say. So, so I was with my grandparents a lot. So we were basically free to go do whatever we wanted to, and nobody really paid attention where you were. So the way I was growing up, I had my birth brother who was older, so I was always with him. So wherever he went, I went with him. So we grew pretty close together. So I remember we'll do silly things like we'll go and just explore. I know one time by accident, my grandfather said, "Hey, don't play with matches," and we ended up burning the whole building down, which was not good, just because they were saving the hay for the horses and the cattle. So my dad started drinking a lot. I could start noticing it by the time I was a little bit older. He was starting to be more abusive, and not so much towards me, but towards my brother. So every time he was drinking, he latched out to my brother. There was one time he got drunk, and I asked for a kitten, and the kitten apparently scratched my mom, and he threw the kitten on the streets. Next thing you know, the truck run over it. So, but you could never really understand why he was the way he was, or why he latched out. So, moral of the story, there was one point where my dad just disappeared. I don't know where he went. My mom was in and out with men. She really loved men. My parents family members told me that she just enjoyed men a lot, and my dad didn't like it. So there was one time, it was probably my last time, we were hanging out in the landfill where all the trash and all of that goes, and we got caught. So apparently it was reported, and they had to come and take us from my parents' house. My mom was there at the time, and But before they came, my my mom said, hey, you need to go hang out with our grandparents. So we hang out with the grandparents, and she's like, hey, just a heads up, Dad's gonna be coming in, and he's just gonna be very angry. So we're like, okay, you know, and she just pre-warned us, like, if Dad comes, just hide underneath the bed. So so he comes, he beats my brother pretty hard, and I just remember coming out of the bed and just screaming, Dad, stop, Dad, stop. And I'll remember Dad picking me up and just throwing me against the wall. And I'll remember before I passed out, my grandma's like, just stop, just stop, just stop. And at that time, he just dropped me. I was passed out, and he was gone. So that was the last time I ever saw my birth dad. And next thing you know, the officers come. They pick me and my brother up. We go to my parents' apartment. They grab everything that I could have, as in clothes-wise. And then from there, we basically went from orphanage to orphanage to orphanage until we got to our final destination. And then we just basically were separated. You know, he was about 3 floors, so I was on the 2nd floor. My brother was basically going straight to 1st grade. And the orphanage was pretty big, where we have to go from one building and walk to another building. So that was basically our school life. And I think I was about 6.5 years old when my brother said, hey, by the way, Dad died, but there was an accident, and that was basically what was told to us. Now that I'm older, I was told that he actually ended up basically jumping in front of a vehicle and basically killing himself just because of the massive pain of radiation. He had really, really bad headaches. He was in pain all the time. He was sick all the time. And he couldn't handle it, you know. On top of that, knowing that his kids were gone, I'm sure that put a lot more headache, I guess I should say. It was rough. It was rough for both of my parents. My mom came one time to see me, and it was rough. You can tell it was rough. But I enjoyed and cherished every minute of it that I got to see her for that one time. And as for my dad, I can't say, you know, he was the best dad, but he was a dad. You know, the days that he was not in pain or he wasn't drinking or smoking, he was a really good dad. We had good times with him. I mean, I was on his knees, he was bouncing me around. So there were days, there were good days, there were bad days, but the days that were good days, I've cherished a lot. And so that gives you a little bit of why we were stripped. Basically, my parents couldn't afford me, and my dad couldn't handle it. My mom wasn't handling it. They were both alcoholics, and it was just not a good environment. So with that being said, the government just said, enough is enough. We're gonna go ahead and take these kids from you. So I was basically stripped from my parents' rights. And so that's how I ended up being an orphanage. And then within the orphanage years, about 7.5, when I was like, you know, 7 or 7.5, I think I was more 7.5. I was like, you know, there was a child was being adopted, and I was like, hey, you know what, I want to be adopted. And I saw the love that this little girl on the swing was getting from parents, and I was like, I really like to have that one day again. And so that's how the whole process started, for them to say, you know what, she's really interested in being adopted. Let's go ahead and pursue what we need to do to get my process going. And so that's how that portion of the story started, of adoption. And I will keep you posted as in what comes next. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.